Inference Plus Story Short Number 30, Series A. The ocean lapped softly against the sides of the ship, leaving a thin trail of salty foam behind as the boat cut through the tide. John Allen squinted his eyes against the glare of the sun glinting off the water as he searched for the first sight of the hills of the Virginia coast. He had left the colony 18 months before to procure more supplies, and he had felt sick with worry every day since. His daughter Prudence had been pregnant with his first grandchild when he left. The child would be walking and talking by now. He or she might well even have a younger brother or sister. His wife had been suffering from a fever when he left. Had she recovered, or was she nothing but bones in her grave? So much would have happened in his absence. He could only pray that all was well. "Land ho!" the crewman shouted from atop the crow's nest. A sliver of land shimmered far away on the horizon. He was nearly home. The ship laid anchor just off the coast. The rough-hewn roofs of the colony's buildings peeked over the tops of the trees. No smoke hung in the air above the village, which struck John Allen as strange. It was a scorchingly hot day, but even so, meals must be prepared, and that meant fires. Perhaps, he reasoned, they'd built a summer kitchen further into the woods in the months he'd been gone. That would be good, he thought, a sign of growth and progress. When the small dinghy pulled ashore, the men were surprised that no one from the village had come down to the beach to meet them. They would have doubtless seen the ship sailing toward shore for hours, and should by all accounts have been excited to receive their visitors, the first in more than a year. But there was no one. Not even a fisherman casting nets in the cove, and not a single footprint save their own marred the sand, in spite of the low tide. "How now?" Allen called. "Good morrow!" Only the birds and the ocean waves replied. Allen and the others felt a rising sense of alarm. They all looked to Allen for guidance. He knew his responsibility of leadership required a level head. He forced a smile. "All are most likely resting in the shade beyond," he said, in a tone he hoped inspired confidence. "'Tis prudent at the heat of midday. Let us go into the village and make a surprise of our arrival." Allen and the men trudged uneasily up the hill and into the village. When they came to the gate, they were shocked to see it swinging back and forth in the hot wind. Placing a hand upon the latch, Allen could plainly see it was in good working order. There was no reason why the gate should have been left open in that way. As soon as he greeted his family, he would find the constable and give him a stern reprimand for his negligence. "How now?" Allen called. Once again, silence. Nothing stirred except the slowly swinging gate. Not a dog, nor a cat or man appeared in the square. Not a single face pressed to a window. The buildings Allen remembered all stood just as they had before, and a few new ones had been added, yet no sign of life could be seen. He strode quickly to the small shack that had been his family's home and flung open the door. The table and benches sat before the hearth. The black cooking pot still hung from its hook above a pile of cold ash. A barrel nearby still contained a handful of uncooked cornmeal. The cradle he had carved for Prudence and the baby before he returned to England sat dust-covered in the corner. The handmade bonnet his wife had so lovingly stitched lay gently inside. The women's aprons hung side by side on their pegs by the door, but there was no sign of any of them. Even the privies, which should have been teeming with stink and flies in the heat, appeared unused for months, devoid of waste or bugs. He searched for grave mounds and found only the long flattened ones that had been there when he left 18 months before. He ran from house to house, flinging wide the doors. All were the same as his own, dusty, abandoned, but otherwise intact. Small amounts of provisions still in their crocks and barrels. Clothing hanging on pegs. Half-sewn quilts in baskets near the window. Tools left rusting out of doors. Heart pounding with panic, Allen called for his wife and daughter until his throat grew dry and no more sound would come. That's when he noticed the tree. Carved in large, clear letters on its trunk was a single word: go.